Good Sunday morning to you from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones with an early morning update on what is still Tropical Storm Beryl. Now, overnight, Beryl has not gained any appreciable intensity. At least I'm saying that. We actually just grabbed the latest 7 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center right before I came on the air here. That's why I was a little bit late getting on. We are still looking at 60-mile-per-hour sustained winds. But having said that, Beryl is showing some signs of organization here on satellite early this morning, and we are expecting Beryl to continue to intensify as it goes through the day today before making landfall sometime either very late tonight or perhaps very early tomorrow morning. Now, the forecast track for Beryl has shifted slightly to the east again, only about 30 miles or so, but we're getting to the point now where just even those slight shifts are going to make a difference in terms of what kind of impacts we're expecting to see across our area. As a result of that, we do have a tropical storm watch now in effect for Jefferson County for the possibility of seeing tropical storm force winds in parts of southeast Texas. So we're going to talk about all of that here over the next little while. I also have, and I posted this on our social media before we came on the air here, the parish by parish and county by county breakdowns of what to expect from Beryl as it makes landfall and moves on inland. So we'll talk about that as well. As always, this is a live interactive briefing. So if you have any questions as we go through our briefing, feel free to post them in our comments section, and we'll be happy to answer them just as soon as we wrap up our briefing here. Just checking to make sure everything is on the up and up before we jump into it. Looks like everything's working well, so let's go ahead and get into it here. This is the infrared / visible satellite. You can see the sun actually coming up here this morning, just now getting to Beryl, and you can see the cluster of what we call the central dense overcast. Is essentially a large cluster of clouds are really beginning to wrap up around that center of circulation again overnight tonight. That's an indication that Beryl is starting to kind of get back aligned again, and beginning to perhaps start to re-intensify again. I do expect that Hurricane Hunter aircraft are going to be back out in this storm this morning to check to see if any intensification is ongoing. But we are expecting Beryl to intensify pretty much throughout the entire day today, and it is still expected to become a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds forecast to be at 85 miles per hour at landfall. So right now, currently at 60 miles per hour, we're going up to 85. At least that's the forecast before right around, say, midnight or so tonight. Again, I mentioned with the forecast track changed a little bit, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. We do now have a tropical storm watch in effect for Jefferson County, and Jefferson County only as far as the area that we cover and the adjacent coastal waters south of Jefferson County. This goes essentially from High Island, Texas to Sabine Pass. And that is for the possibility, not guaranteed, but the possibility that we could see tropical storm force winds in parts of Jefferson County as the storm makes landfall tonight and into tomorrow. So we do have that tropical storm watch in effect. If we see a further track shift to the east, then we could see additional tropical storm watches and or warnings go up. In fact, this will probably be changed to a tropical storm warning if that forecast track continues to shift east. I don't expect there to be much more of an eastward shift, but then again, I didn't expect the one last night either, and that wound up happening. So that's something we just kind of have to bear in mind. This is the latest track. This is the 7 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, hot off the presses. Just came out here just a couple of minutes ago. Maximum sustained winds are still near 60 miles per hour, and we're looking at a continued northwesterly movement around 12 miles per hour. Now, again, that forecast track was shifted slightly to the east early this morning, about 30 miles or thereabout. And we're looking at landfall now sometime right around maybe midnight or so tonight, or very, very early tomorrow morning, somewhere near the Matagorda Bay area. That's kind of what we're expecting. That's, again, about 30 miles east of the previous track. And we are still expecting the storm to become at least a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds near 85 miles per hour prior to it making landfall late tonight or early tomorrow morning. So that's kind of the bottom line as far as the changes between last night and this morning go. We're still looking at Beryl moving over some very warm sea surface temperatures in the mid to upper 80s, 86 to 87 degrees sea surface temperatures. And that wind shear that had been inhibiting Beryl is now essentially gone. We were showing you, if you watched our briefings yesterday, some of those yellows and reds indicating strong wind shear over the Gulf of Mexico. You can see there's pretty much nothing left to that wind shear. You see a lot of those dark blues and blacks. That's an indication of very low or no wind shear across the Gulf of Mexico right now. So that is very favorable conditions for Beryl to continue to intensify through the day today. Once it kind of gets realigned, remember, as it moved across the Yucatan, it was kind of shifted apart so that the low-level circulation and the mid-level circulation were what we call tilted. They were essentially in two different areas. But as they kind of get back on top of one another, we're going to be looking at the potential for intensification as we go through the day today, because otherwise conditions are very favorable across the western Gulf of Mexico. Now, again, the overall probabilities of seeing tropical storm force winds, even in the area that we have tropical storm warnings for Jefferson County, are still relatively low, but they are high enough that we felt it necessary to issue that tropical storm watch. So generally, we're looking at a 20 to 40% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds across southeast Texas, essentially over the next 24 hours or thereabout. For southwest Louisiana, we're looking at between about a 5 and 20% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds, so even lower probabilities for anywhere across southwest Louisiana. If anywhere is going to see it right now, it looks like it's going to be coastal parts of Cameron Parish. They have the highest probabilities, which makes sense, being right along the coastline with the winds coming just off the water. These, of course, these probabilities are subject to change. If we do see another eastward shift in that forecast track, then these probabilities will also change along with it. Now, we are not expecting hurricane force winds anywhere in southeast Texas or southwest Louisiana. We have less than a 5% chance of seeing hurricane force winds, and I'd put that closer to probably about 1% at this point, just because I can't say zero. But we are absolutely not expecting hurricane force winds anywhere across southeast Texas or southwest Louisiana at this time. Now, as far as when those tropical storm force winds, if we do end up seeing them, when are they going to begin? They're going to begin this evening, actually. We're going to be looking at them approaching the coastline by about 8 p.m. this evening, so between about 8 p.m. and midnight for coastal portions of southeast Texas, and then perhaps a little bit later into the evening between about 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. if we happen to see any kind of tropical storm force winds across southwest Louisiana, which again is very unlikely. But if we are going to see tropical storm force winds, it's going to be late this evening into early tomorrow morning for those to actually begin across the area. Of a bigger concern than the winds is going to be the potential for heavy rainfall, and we are looking at the possibility of some flash flooding today and tomorrow. Now, this is mainly going to be later in the day, although we have had some outer rain bands already move across the area this morning. We had an outer rain band move across parts of southeast Texas, the Beaumont-Port Arthur area. You probably saw some rain earlier this morning. Even here in Lake Charles at the airport, we had a little bit of light showers moving across the area about 3 or 4 o'clock this morning. And those were associated with the outer rain bands of Beryl. So the impacts have already actually begun across parts of the area here this morning. But we are expecting those outer rain bands to continue to kind of intermittently come into the area this afternoon, into this evening, especially as we get into later in the day today, into this evening and overnight. We're going to be looking at more of those rain bands and more of that heavier rain beginning to move into the area. So we do have a risk of heavy rainfall, and that could lead to some flash flooding. For today and tonight, we're looking at the highest risk of flash flooding. You see the area highlighted in yellow there across parts of southern Jefferson County, the Beaumont-Port Arthur area. You're in a 15% chance for seeing flash flooding in those areas. The remainder of the area is kind of in that dark green. That's a 5% chance, and that covers pretty much the rest of southeast Texas and all of southwest and south central Louisiana. Taking a look as we head into tomorrow, I think tomorrow is probably going to be the best or better potential for flash flooding day. This is when we're probably going to see the most overall rainfalls. You can see most of the region highlighted, or at least all of southeast Texas and western Louisiana highlighted in that yellow. That's a 15% chance of seeing flash flooding. Over towards Acadiana, Lafayette, New Iberia, up towards Alexandria, you're in a lower overall risk, 5%. And then you can see the areas highlighted in red. That's going to include the Houston, Galveston area down towards Freeport. You're in a moderate risk. That's a 40% chance of seeing flash flooding as we go through the day tomorrow. So that's when we're expecting the highest overall rainfall to occur, is mainly going to be tomorrow. It's probably going to linger into Tuesday as well. You can see there's the excessive rainfall outlook for Tuesday. This is mainly going to be for any kind of residual rain bands as the remnants of Beryl begin to move off to the northeast. By that point, they're going to be moving into kind of southern Arkansas. but we could still see some rain bands kind of wrapping around the southern side of it. So we do still have a low-end risk for flash flooding on Tuesday, and we are still expecting to see at least some scattered showers and thunderstorms around through the day on Tuesday because of that. Now, as far as the rainfall totals, generally speaking, we're looking at between 2 and 4 inches expected across southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. Obviously, the higher risk and the higher totals are going to be across parts of southeast Texas. We could be looking at up to 8 inches possible in a few locations where we see some of those rain bands moving over the same area kind of over and over again. But generally speaking, we're looking at 2 to 4 inches, kind of our widespread total. So most areas will expect to see somewhere in the range of 2 to 4 inches between now, essentially, and the end of the day on Tuesday. In addition to the flooding threat from rainfall, we're also going to be looking at a coastal flooding threat from those potentially tropical storm force winds that we're going to be looking at moving into parts of coastal Jefferson County and Cameron Parish. We do have a storm surge watch now in effect for southern Jefferson County. That's issued whenever we're expecting the possibility of greater than 3 feet of storm surge. And the storm surge is the forecast is for 2 to 4 feet across parts of the Texas Gulf Coast, essentially from Galveston to Sabine Pass. So that would include coastal portions of Jefferson County, hence the region for that storm surge watch. We also have a coastal flood watch in effect for coastal parts of Cameron Parish, where we're expecting 1 to 3 feet of storm surge, and we're going to be looking at I'll show you the graphs here for the tides and the forecast tides for that, but we are going to be looking at some coastal flooding across those areas. It also wouldn't surprise me to see some minor coastal flooding in and around Vermilion Bay. Those forecast surge values aren't expected to be quite as high, but we are going to be looking at the potential for at least some minor coastal flooding over that way as well. We'll talk about those graphics in just a second. I want to kind of show you just a broad overview of what we're expecting with this entire storm. The highest storm surge is going to be essentially from Matagorda Bay eastward to Galveston Bay. That makes sense. That's where the storm is going to be making landfall, and points further east. So 4 to 6 feet in those locations. You can see gradually kind of waning off as we get over towards High Island, 2 to 4 feet, and then from Sabine Pass to Cameron, we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 3 feet. East of there, generally 1 to 2 feet. So we're not saying there won't be any kind of coastal flooding over towards Vermilion Bay, just that it'll be somewhat lower in the 1 to 2 foot range. Here's the graphics I'm going to show you. Let me go ahead and make this full screen for you so you can maybe get a little bit better look at what we're talking about here. This is Calcasieu Pass. The numbers are actually going to be higher across southeast Texas, but I'm just starting with Calcasieu Pass because it was the first one on my list. You can see the blue line there is the normal tide levels. That's where we would normally be without any kind of a surge. The black line is with the surge added in. That's the actual forecast. So you can see by Monday morning, that's the vertical line. We're looking at roughly about 2 feet of storm surge above predicted levels at Calcasieu Pass. Now, this isn't going to be a long-lived thing. You can see by that's only going to be during the kind of the high tide period. By the time we get into Monday night into to Tuesday morning, you can see we're just ever so slightly above where we would typically expect to be. So we're actually already running above normal, about a half foot. The highest tide and surge combined is going to be, it looks like, sometime tomorrow morning. That makes sense, again, with the landfall. And that's when we're going to be expected to see the most significant coastal flooding is essentially going to be during high tide, which is going to be tomorrow morning. Come back. I went away. Press the wrong button, as usual. Taking a look at Texas Point over in southeast Texas. This is coastal Jefferson County. Pretty much the exact same timeline as far as when we're expecting the most significant coastal flooding, but the numbers are a little higher. You can see the surge there. The maximum surge is going to be right around 3 feet. So we're predicting between 2 and 4. This graph here showing right at 3 feet, which is right in between there. So we are going to be looking at some considerable coastal flooding along coastal parts of Jefferson County as we go through. Again, this is going to be fairly short-lived. It's mainly going to be just at high tide, about a maybe 8-ish hour period late tonight into early Monday morning. And then we're still going to be running slightly above normal heading into Tuesday and Wednesday because we're still going to be looking at a fairly strong, a fairly brisk, I should say, southeasterly wind, but not going to be anything on the order of magnitude of what we're going to see Monday morning. That's going to be the most significant time for coastal flooding. Looking over towards south central Louisiana, this is the Llama gauge as kind of a proxy for Vermilion Bay. we are going to be looking at between about a foot to a foot and a half above normal. This one's going to linger a little bit more. You can see we have the high tide Monday morning, and then we're going to be looking at another high tide Tuesday morning as well. So we may kind of have a double dip of coastal flooding. It's going to be lower. We're not going to be looking at 3 feet. It's only going to be about a foot to a foot and a half, but we may be looking at kind of a double round of coastal flooding across Vermilion Bay as we go both Monday morning and Tuesday morning. Of course, in addition to all of those threats, we're also going to be looking at a low-end tornado threat, which is always the case when we're talking about a landfalling tropical system. Even those outer rain bands have the potential to produce tornadoes, and we're going to be looking at that. This is today's severe weather outlook. The highest overall risk, which is still relatively low, is going to be across southeast Texas, coastal portions of southeast Texas. So essentially Jefferson County, western parts of Hardin County in a low overall risk. Let me show you, pull this back up here. This is the actual probabilities of for tornadoes. This is very similar to what we look at when we're talking about a severe weather event. This one just happens to be related to tropical activity. So roughly a 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado across western parts of Jefferson County. And the area is highlighted in green here, which is kind of the western parts of Hardin County and eastern Jefferson County in a 2 to 4% chance. So it's not a particularly high risk for seeing tornadoes, but it is something that is worth mentioning. Now, as we head into tomorrow, that risk is going to increase a little more because we're going to get more in the way of rain bands moving out of the Gulf of Mexico. So we're looking at a slight risk, essentially all of southeast Texas and western Louisiana, and a marginal risk further to the east across Acadiana. So from Alexandria down towards Lafayette, New Iberia, we're going to be looking at a marginal risk for that. So how does that pan out in terms of actual tornado potential? We're going to be looking at roughly a 5 to 10% chance of seeing tornadoes within 25 miles of any given location in southeast Texas and western Louisiana. That's the areas highlighted in brown here. The area is highlighted in green, so that's Lafayette, New Iberia, up towards Alexandria. So kind of basically the central part of Louisiana, looking at a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado. Now, it's important to keep in mind that when we're talking about tornadoes associated with tropical systems, they often can spin up very quickly. They don't last very long, oftentimes maybe just a minute or two at most. They tend to be very weak. But they're moving very fast because they're moving within the actual rain band itself. So a lot of times we don't have an opportunity to put out much warning with these tornadoes. If we get a tornado warning out at all, a lot of times it's not a 15 to 20 minute in advance warning time. You may only have a couple of minutes when we're talking about a tornado that's moving with those rain bands at a fairly high clip, high rate of speed. So just something to kind of keep in mind that's a little bit different than we would have with a typical, supercell or cold front type of tornado that's rolling through the area. These are going to be moving much faster, and they don't last nearly as long. They're very, very quick. Taking a quick look at the 4-day outlook here as we go through the next few days. Obviously, very high rain chances today, mainly this afternoon into this evening. Very high rain chances tomorrow. A little bit lower as we get into Tuesday, but we're still looking at about a 50 to 80% chance for those residual rain bands that are moving across the area as the remnants kind of lift off. And then by Wednesday, we'll get a little bit lower overall rainfall. We still may have some remnant activity from Beryl all the way as far out as Wednesday. Not everybody's going to see rain on Wednesday, but there may still be a few rain bands still around as a result of Beryl. So that's what we have here from the National Weather Service. We are going to do our parish and county breakdowns here next. But if you're not interested in that, we are going to do another briefing here this evening. We're going to plan to do it probably around 7:30 p.m. It's the same time we did last time. At that point, Beryl theoretically should be stronger and also should be getting ready to make landfall within just a few hours by that point. But that'll be our next briefing update. It'll be around 7:30 p.m. this evening. So be on the lookout for that. Now, I'm going to run through this fairly quickly. But all of these graphics that I'm about to show you are available on our social media pages. They were already posted on there earlier. So if you're watching us on Facebook, they're going to be right below this briefing here. If you're watching us on X, on our profile, we have all of these graphics that you're about to see. They are posted on there as well. So if you miss it for whatever reason, instead of me going back through it, 500 times, they're all there for you to see at a much slower pace. Let me go ahead and make this full screen before we begin this here. And again, also, if you miss it on here, you can always rewind. At least I know you can on Facebook. I'm not sure about X, but you can rewind this video and see what it says if I go too fast for him. I'm trying not to go too fast, but we're not going to spend too much time on this. The most significant impacts are going to be felt across Jefferson County. Let me get me out of the way here so you can actually read what it has to say. This is where we're going to be looking at our potential for tropical storm force winds. We're looking at sustained winds of 30 to 40 miles per hour, gusting to 50. We are going to be looking at 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. Generally, we're looking at 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, but we like to say double those values for our locally higher amounts where we get some of those rain bands sitting over the same area for a long period of time. So up to 8 inches is not out of the realm of possibility for parts of Jefferson County. We are going to be looking at a 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado somewhere across Jefferson County. So with those kind of winds, we are going to be looking at the potential for some power outages. Not everywhere, but there will be, I think with those kind of winds, we are going to be looking at least a few power outages from branches falling on trees. And then, of course, we've got our coastal flooding that will inundate infrastructure right along the immediate coastline. And then we can't rule out, again, those possibilities, those quick, weak tornadoes. Work, go. Hang on. All right, moving right along. Now looking at Orange County, we're generally looking at 20 to 25 mile per hour winds, gusting to 35, 1 to 2 feet of storm surge. Again, you're a little bit further east, so storm surge is going to be considerably less. We're not really looking at much of a coastal flooding threat across Orange County, maybe right along the northern edge of Sabine Lake, but that's going to be about it. 2 to 4 inches of rainfall expected, up to 8 inches possible, and you're also in that slight risk, that 5 to 10% chance of seeing a quick spin-up tornado. There will also be the possibility for a few power outages across Orange. For Hardin, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 35, not expecting any storm surge, obviously, in Hardin County. 2 to 4 inches of rain, up to 8 inches possible. We're going to be looking at that slight risk of a tornado. You're also in that 5 to 10% risk area. And we could see a few power outages across Hardin County as well. For Tyler County, 20 to 25 mile per hour sustained winds gusting to 35. We're not looking at any storm surge in Tyler County, obviously. 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, up to 8 inches possible. You are also in that slight risk, that 5 to 10% risk for tornadoes. For Jasper County, very similar, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 35. 2 to 4 inches of rain with up to 8 inches possible. A 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado. And we could see a couple of power outages across Jasper County. Newton County, pretty much identical, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 35, no storm surge. Rainfall of 2 to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. A 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado in Newton County. And we could see a couple of power outages up that way as well. For Cameron Parish, closer to the coastline, the winds might be a little bit higher, 20 to 25 miles per hour, gusting to 35. Can't completely rule out maybe a gust of 40 miles an hour, but I think that's fairly unlikely at this point. Storm surge going to be 1 to 2 feet. We're looking at 2 to 4 inches of rainfall with up to 8 inches possible. Slight risk, so we're looking at a 5 to 10% chance of a quick spin-up tornado in Cameron Parish. It's also possible we could be looking at water spouts developing that could move onshore and become tornadoes as well, being right along the coast there. And then we could be looking at a few power outages with those wind gusts as well. Calcasieu Parish, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting 35. No storm surge expected across Calcasieu, looking at 2 to 4 inches of rain with up to 8 inches possible. Also in the slight risk for tornadoes, looking at a 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado. And we could see a few power outages across Calcasieu Parish with some of those stronger gusts if we do get some branches knocked onto trees. Beauregard Parish, looking at 20 to 25 mile per hour winds gusting to 35, no storm surge. 2 to 4 inches of rain with up to 8 inches possible. A 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado. And again, a few power outages, not out of the realm of possibility for Beauregard. For Vernon, 20 to 25, gust 35 for the winds, no storm surge. Rainfall 1 to 2 inches with up to 4 inches possible. A 5 to 10% chance of seeing a quick spin-up tornado. And not out of the realm of possibility, we could see a couple of power outages across Vernon. For Jeff Davis, a little bit lower winds. We're a little bit further east, 15 to 25, gusting to 30. No storm surge expected, 1 to 2 inches of rainfall with up to 4 inches possible. 5 to 10% chance of seeing a tornado. and not expecting any power outages to speak of across Jeff Davis Parish with winds of only 15 to 25, maybe 30. I think the power grid can handle a 30-mile-an-hour wind gust, especially around here. For Allen Parish, 15 to 25, gusting to 30. No storm surge. Rainfall 1 to 2 inches with up to 4 inches possible. A 5 to 10% chance of seeing a quick spin-up tornado, and we're not expecting any power outages across Allen. For Rapides, 15 to 25 miles an hour, gusting to 30. No storm surge. Rainfall of a ½ inch to an inch, possibly up to 2 inches. You're kind of a little bit further away from the center of circulation, so we're not expecting as much rainfall over that way. Still looking at the possibility of a tornado, though, 5 to 10%, and I don't think we're going to see any power outages across Rapides. For Vermilion, 20 to 25 miles an hour, gusting to 35. Storm surge is going to be 1 to 2 feet around Vermilion Bay. Rainfall looking at 2 to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. We're going to be looking at a lower overall tornado risk for Vermilion Parish, looking at anywhere between a 2 to 4% chance. So tornadoes not quite as high of a risk over that way, but with those gusts to 35 miles an hour, we could potentially see a fewer power outages over that way. Acadia Parish, 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusting to 20. No storm surge to speak of. Rainfall 2 to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. A 2 to 4% low-end risk for a tornado, and we're not expecting any power outages across Acadia. For Evangeline, 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusting to 20. No storm surge. Rainfall of 1 to 2 inches with up to 4 inches possible. You're also in that marginal risk, so only a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado, and we're not expecting any power outages across Evangeline. For Avoyelles, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds gusting to 20. No storm surge. Rainfall between a ½ inch to an inch with up to 2 inches possible. You're in that lowest overall risk, that marginal risk as well, a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado, and we're not expecting power outages across Avoyelles. For St. Landry, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds gusting to 20, no storm surge to speak of. Rainfall of 1 to 2 inches with up to 4 inches possible. A marginal risk, that's a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado, and we're not expecting power outages across St. Landry. For Lafayette, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds gusting to 20, no storm surge expected. Rainfall 2 to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. We're looking at a marginal risk, so only a 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado, and we're not expecting any appreciable power outages across Lafayette Parish. For Iberia Parish, 15 to 20 mile per hour winds gusting to 25. Storm surge 1 to 2 feet right along the coast. Rainfall 2 to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. You're also in that marginal risk, that 2 to 4% chance of seeing a quick spin-up tornado, and we're not expecting power outages across Iberia. St. Martin, very similar, 15 to 20, gusting to 25 mile per hour winds. Storm surge of 1 to 2 feet along the coast. Rainfall 2 to 4 inches with up to 8 inches possible. A marginal 2 to 4% chance of seeing a tornado, and not expecting any power outages. Finally, last but not least, St. Mary Parish, 15 to 20 mile per hour winds gusting to 25. Storm surge of 1 to 2 feet, 2 to 4 inches of rainfall with up to 8 inches possible. And you are also in that marginal 2 to 4% chance risk of seeing a quick isolated tornado. We are not expecting any power outages in St. Mary. So that's what I have here for you this morning from the National Weather Service. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in our comment section. Again, if you missed any of those individual parishes or county graphics, they are available on our Facebook page and on X right now. So you can hop down there and check them out at your leisure. Let me go ahead and check and see if we do have any questions here. Bear with me just a minute. I'm going to back up. I'm not going to go all the way back to the beginning. So if you had a question and you're still watching it, throw it back in there again. I'll be happy to answer it for you. I just don't want to go too far back and get questions for people who may not be watching anymore. Chelsea asks, should Cameron Parish people move up? I have a 1-year-old and a disabled mother-in-law, so I'm a little concerned. Look, if you're concerned and you think that you would not be able to move in the event of an unfortunate emergency, then yeah, there's absolutely no harm in getting out of harm's way. Now, I don't expect there to be significant issues down in Cameron Parish. 1 to 2 foot of storm surge or coastal flooding down in Cameron Parish is nothing compared to what y'all have seen at other tropical systems in the past. We've been using Tropical Storm Alberto, which fortunately or unfortunately created similar surge values just a couple of weeks ago. So if you had issues during Alberto, you may have issues during this event. If you didn't, you're probably going to be okay for this event as well. Bethany says, I know I'm hungry. He said tornado potential, and I heard potato potential. Potato potential sounds like a much better time. Lori asks, why do these storms always hit at night? That's just kind of the luck of the draw. I don't think there's any, there's no meteorological reasoning behind whether storms hit at night or during the day. It's just how fast they happen to be moving at any particular time. There's not any meteorological reasoning that a storm would hit at night versus not. Candy says, I just want to thank Donald for such a thorough briefing. You're quite welcome, Candy. We are happy to do it, and we are glad that you're watching. Let's see. Lori asks, does landfall mean when the first round of bands hit or the eye literally touches land? The second one is when the eye actually makes landfall, or the center of circulation if there is no eye. We've been looking, again, we've had outer rain bands already move across parts of our area here this morning. So in that respect, we're already starting to see impacts. But landfall itself, by definition, is when the eye or when the center of circulation actually crosses from water to land. Bethany says, or asks, you said the track shifted about 30 miles east. Yes, compared to last night, the track has shifted, or the forecast landfall point has shifted about 30 miles east with the advisory that was issued at 4 a.m. this morning by the National Hurricane Center. So now we're looking at a landfall roughly somewhere right around Matagorda Bay. You can see that behind me here. Liz says, it's my birthday week, didn't need this, even if it won't be too terribly bad in Jeff Davis Parish. Well, Liz, the weather wanted to make sure that you had a memorable birthday, so. Crystal asks, do you expect to see any significant shifts in the track before landfall? I didn't expect necessarily to see the shift in the track that we saw this morning. So no, I don't expect to see any significant shifts in the track. Maybe, a few miles one way or the other. Let me go ahead and make this full screen so we can take a little bit closer look at it. But that's why we do have the cone of uncertainty. And if you're anywhere within that cone, that's kind of the range either side at which the eye or the center of circulation could wind up making landfall. So at this stage, we're looking at roughly about 50 miles or thereabout either side of where the center is expected to actually make landfall. So we're calling for an official landfall point at Matagorda Bay, but a shift between now and then of 50 miles to the east is not out of the realm of possibility. Same thing to the west, but I think it's more likely to the east since we've been moving constantly to the east for the last several days. Big Johnson asks, based on the current track or another eastward shift, should Lake Charles residents board up and evacuate? No. There is no reason to board up and or evacuate. We are not expecting even tropical storm force winds in the Lake Charles area at this point. So no, there's no reason for boarding up or evacuating. Terry asks, can a Cat 1 be as dangerous as a Cat 2 or 3? And if yes, how? Thanks. It depends on the situation. A Category 1 that's very slow moving can certainly dump a whole lot more rainfall than a faster moving Category 2 or Category 3. The important thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to hurricanes, it's not necessarily all about the wind. The wind determines what category it is, but the wind does not necessarily reflect all of the potential impacts. If you've got a slow moving system, you can have a lot more rainfall. If you had a system that was previously very, very strong, the storm surge could still be very strong, even though the winds themselves are actually weaker. So it just depends on the situation. As it stands right now, we're expecting a Category 1 hurricane at landfall. The official forecast is for 85-mile-per-hour winds at landfall late tonight. Kent asks, how safe is it to be traveling to work at 6 a.m. in Southeast Texas and Southwest Louisiana, Orange to Hackberry? You're probably going to be looking at some of those rain bands moving through, so you'll probably be you'll probably be going through some rain, and it'll be breezy, but I don't think it'll be necessarily dangerous. Just keep your hands on the wheel. Jerry says, when the track changes, the error cone changes. The error cone is useless, says Jerry. Now, the error cone is not useless. The error cone is statistics. The error cone is the statistical error of the National Hurricane Center historically. So, yes, you're right that when the track shifts, the error cone also shifts, but it gives you an idea of where the track could potentially shift during the future. So it's by no means useless. Janet summed it up perfectly here. Run from the water, hide from the wind. That's what we preach constantly around here. And what that means is essentially, it's not the winds of a hurricane that are going to kill you. It's the water. It's the storm surge. It's the flooding rain. So if we were looking at a significant storm surge across the area, that's when we'd be calling for evacuations. We're not expecting significant storm surge. And that's part of the reason why evacuations are not going to be really a factor in this part of the world for this event. Laura asks, is this another Laura situation? Laura, do you just want to be another Laura? No. This is not Hurricane Laura. This is not anything close to Hurricane Laura, and we are not going to see anything close to the impacts from Hurricane Laura with this system. First off, the system's not making landfall in our area. Second, it's not going to be nearly as strong. So we're looking at much, much lower impacts from this compared to Laura. Katie's asking, is there any tropical force winds or high flood potential in Lafayette and Iberia Parish? No, we're expecting maybe gusts to 15, 20, maybe 25 miles an hour. That's going to be about it as far as that. You are going to see some rain, but that's going to be about it. I've got a lot of people asking me about different areas. I've covered I've covered all of the areas that we've already that we cover in Southeast Texas and Southwest Louisiana. So if you do still have a question about them specifically, you can actually rewind and watch. Again, I did the individual parish and county breakdown, so you can see exactly what you can expect. If you don't want to go back and try to find it in the video, I also have those graphics posted on our Facebook and X pages. So you can find your individual parish and county and exactly what to expect there just by scrolling down slightly. Bethany asks, what is the reason for them shutting down Galveston Bay area at 1 p.m. today? We don't cover the Galveston Bay area. That's actually the Weather Service office in Houston. So I'm using that as a cop-out because I don't know. We don't keep up with that area, so I can't really answer your question. Same thing. Patrick's asking about Liberty, Texas. We don't cover Liberty, Texas. Again, that's the Weather Service office in Houston. I wish I could answer everybody's question for that's in Texas. I would love to, but I haven't actually been looking at all of that because we cover a very specific area. And I don't want to give you bad information. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here for the time being. If you have a question that I missed for some reason, or you think of a question while you're viewing this as a recording, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook. We get lots of questions that way, and we try to answer every single one of them. So feel free to send us a message that way. You can send us a message on X/Twitter, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you that way. If you want to message me personally, you can shoot me an email. Email's on your screen there. It's donald.jones, So it's just my name with a dot in the middle at NOAA, NOAA.gov. You can also call us here at the Weather Service office. We're got forecasters here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Area code 337-477-5285 if you'd like the personal experience. So lots of ways to get in touch with us if you do still have questions. Again, we will do another briefing this evening. We're going to plan to do it probably around 7:30, which was the same time we did it last night. By that point, we should have a stronger Beryl, at least if the forecast pans out. And Beryl should be only a few hours away from making landfall at that point. We're going to be looking at a landfall very late tonight, probably sometime between about 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. And that's going to be around the Matagorda area. Still, we're going to be looking at those outer rain bands gradually moving into our area through the day today, especially late this afternoon into tonight. So if you have outdoor activities, you want to get them done earlier in the day today, because we're going to be looking at more rainfall as we get into the evening and overnight hours tonight, and especially as we go through the day tomorrow. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Day's just getting started, so you got plenty of time to get stuff done. Stay safe, stay dry. We'll talk to you again this evening.